Clariann, come on in.
Hello, everybody. I'm Clariann, and I am a grateful recovering alcoholic. And I always like to say, if it wasn't because of my faith in God and the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would not be alive today. So I stand here really grateful today to share a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope with all of you. And my journey in recovery to sobriety is all proof of God's grace. There's no other way to explain it. So I'll start by telling you where I'm from. And I'm from New York, and I was born and raised there I was born in White Plains. We moved to a town called Mayapack. If any of you are familiar, it's in Upper Westchester County. And my parents were of Puerto Rican descent. They came here from the island when they were like 16, and they built their way up and were very successful. My father became a criminal investigator for homicide and narcotics, and my mom was the DEA. My father was also a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and needless to say, we couldn't get away with much, and our lives were really strict. You know, as a kid, everything, our friends were vetted. We weren't allowed to sleep over other people's houses. My father was really a stickler, but that's only because of their careers, and they had to protect us, of course. And my life was very regimented as a child. And I never felt good enough at a young age. I often tried hard to fit in. I often wanted what people wanted, and I often wanted to be someone else. And I constantly worried that I just would get in trouble. I was constantly lying, constantly manipulating to get my way. And if I think about it, after I thought about all of that, looking back, that was my first set of alcoholic thinking, even before I picked up a drink or even thought of picking up a drink. And then no, in my culture, alcohol is really prevalent. We have a rum factory on the island, so Bacardi is a huge thing, and my family embraces that. And so my whole life, it was party handlers at 2 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Eve. People were still coming in with liquor. People were passing out wherever they were drunk, and it was just normal for me to step over the aunts and uncles that fell asleep wherever they crashed, and during holidays and functions and stuff. And I never thought anything of it. Um, one thing my father demanded was perfection when it came to our education. So, and education came really easy to me. And I excelled in school and I did very well. That took me all the way to get into college. And I went to Florida State University. And let me tell you, when I got away from my parents, I had a scholarship. So I was away from them and monetarily away from them. Like, let's sever that. And I was solely excited to be on my own. That's not a good combination for somebody who has my type of thinking. But I went ahead and I got into Florida State, and 21 was my 21st birthday was when I had my first drink of alcohol, and I got alcohol poisoning. And I was drinking 7 to 7s, and I was throwing them back all night. You would think I had been done this my whole life, and I loved. Let me tell you, I drank, and then it put me in the hospital. And next thing I know, I got alcohol poisoning. It took me a week to get over. Anyone who's had it before, it's terrible. And you would think that it would deter me from drinking, but it didn't. I absolutely loved the way alcohol made me feel. I found the void filler. I found every single thing that I was missing, I felt. It became my best friend. I was the prettiest girl in the room, the most confident girl in the room. I had that liquid courage. I always fit in, I felt, and it was perfect. I had my friend alongside me, a little alcohol, and I was great in the social activities. And then it got progressively worse. We all know this is a progressive disease. And I ended up changing my classes at one point to Tuesdays and Thursdays only, so I could party Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The parties turned into clubs, into house parties, into restaurants where I'm not eating, I'm only drinking just to drink, and then went to bars. And many times I put myself in compromising situations, and but that still wasn't enough. I had no consequences. So I kept on drinking. And after I graduated very well from school, I went on and I didn't think it was a problem, people. I didn't think it was a problem. I got an education, right? I graduated, so I'm not an alcoholic. I just like to have a good time. So when I went directly to work after I got out of college. And at this time, I was drinking every day, but in the evenings. And then I was drinking heavily, but it was at night. So I would have those hangovers in the morning, but I wasn't yet chasing the hair of the dog. So it was still getting progressive. But then in 2006, I got pregnant with my son. And by the grace of a higher power who I call God, I immediately was able to abstain without even hesitation. I nursed him for 11 months and did not have a lick of alcohol. But as soon as I stopped nursing, I went right back to the races. And I started to continue drinking immediately. And the drinking got, again, progressively worse. So when it got so progressively worse that it came to 2010. My son's 4 years old, and I'm on this wine binge. I don't know if any of you are like me, but I've changed from the white liquor to the dark liquor. I changed for the beer, shot in a beer. This was the wine part. I was on the red wine binge, and I was throwing up all that nasty red wine, and my stomach was killing me, burning, and I'm on the floor on my knees praying to God to let it stop. So I got the courage to call my mother and tell her I wanted to go to rehab. Let me tell you, my mother just stopped everything she was doing and came right to me. It's funny to say this. I don't think I've mentioned this before. My mother thought that my problem was pills. She knew I had an issue, but she thought it was pills. Her being in the DEA, I think that's what misconstrued her mind. And after you'd see all of our family members that are heavy drinkers. I think she just didn't go that route, but she definitely saw it when she saw me. And she knew. She took me straight to rehab, which was 3.5 hours away. After she came 2 hours to come get me, took me to rehab that was 3 hours away in Port St. Lucie, Florida, and bought me my first and only drink of alcohol. And that was a bottle of Seagram's and gin, which was my favorite. And I drank the whole fifth on the way down there. When I got to rehab, my alcohol level was through the roof. And I did my rehab, I got into rehab, and I went to my first AA meeting in rehab. And I'll tell you, I went to AA meeting and I didn't have my best friend. So I didn't fit in, and I definitely didn't fit in with all these people there. There were a lot of bikers. People did not look like they were from New York. People did not look like my type of people, my type. I'm using air quotes. And I didn't hear anything about this blue book. I'm sitting in this thing they called a boat, which made me in the middle of everybody. And I was just like, they want me to sell my problems to them? Like, no way. But obviously, I wasn't working a program, and I didn't know what incomprehensible demoralization meant. I didn't know what any of that meant. I just was like, I don't fit in here. So when I got a rehab, I did 90 days, and within 90 days, I kept on drinking. I started drinking again, and it got progressively worse. And then in 2014, I had my daughter. I got pregnant with my daughter, and I had the shakes, I had the DTs and everything. And I was able to hide it from my obstetrician. And he didn't know that I had a drinking problem. Of course, I didn't even know I had a drinking problem. But with my daughter and the grace of God, I was able to abstain totally, able to abstain through the 9 months I nursed her. But as soon as I was done, I went right back to drinking. And after that, a year later, my father died. And I got met with the four horsemen, terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. I met with all of them. But I had to use that as a reason to keep on drinking, right? Because I was hurt. So I drank if I was happy. I drank if I was sad. So my father died. It was even more of a reason for me to drink. So I went gallivanting away with those four horsemen. So drunk at my dad's funeral, I had to be removed. It was a bad situation. I didn't remember most of it, but I sure remembered it after the next day when I was told what happened. And then after that, it got progressively worse. I was fell deeper and deeper into this abyss. And every day I was starting to drink now at 6 a.m. And that was my coffee. And I don't know if you're like me, but I would take one back to throw it up real quick, to take another one to stop the shakes, just so I could be normal, just so I could be like this, so my hands weren't shaking. And then I throw like three or four more back, and then I would be able to go to work because I was normal. Mind you, I'm drinking like this. I'm dropping my kids off at school like this. I'm doing everything like this, but I'm normal because I'm not shaking, right? So I'm not an alcoholic. And I go to work every day. But my shaking was out of control and I couldn't do anything about it. So I had to start bringing my liquor to work. And I brought up fireball sleeves, like a 12 pack or 10 pack. And I would take them with me to work, put them in my purse, and I would throw a couple back before I did a signing. Mind you, I'm a real estate signing agent, a title agent with the state of Florida license. So I handle multi-million dollars in escrow. No, I thank by the grace of God, I didn't mess up anyone's sale of a home, but it definitely could have been a bad situation. But in the times where I had to sign people when they were closing on their home, my hands would be shaking. So I would throw a few back in the bathroom, get the shakes to stop, introduce myself, and bring in a bowl of hot candies. And I would tell them, candy keeps you honest, eat some candy. And I was just trying to get my smell away, obviously. But they matched the whiskey smell, the top tamales, if any of you have had Fireball. So I started to lose a tremendous amount of weight. I wasn't eating at all. I was only drinking. I couldn't even put back water. Water was nauseating. I don't know if any of you were like me, but that's how it was. I could not. I just wanted alcohol. It was King alcohol was all I wanted, and my gin, and I was fine. Gin or vodka, and I was fine. And I didn't care if it was hot. I didn't care if it was straight or with a. I didn't need a mixer. That I didn't get drunk enough fast enough, and it just got it got so bad that I had to resign from my job for medical reasons. And shortly after that, I began to get sick. And before I want to say this, have you any of you done the liquor store shuffle? Because I did. I used to go to like Winn-Dixie, ABC, Publix, Sam's, everywhere, so no one would think I'm an alcoholic, right? I was telling myself I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm going to different stores with my hands like this, trying to pay, and I'm talking about my blood sugar's low. Just give me my change. Yeah, whatever. Trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, and it didn't work, obviously. I mean, I got my liquor, but they didn't stop me. So I just knew if I switched up the spots, I wouldn't look so bad. So after I resigned from my job for medical reasons, I began to get really sick. And I thought alcohol had nothing to do with it. So I started drinking some. I just kept on drinking every day, 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. It was the hair of the dog every day. And it continued every day until I went to sleep and then woke up and did it again. And I was turning yellow. And I had this big distended belly. Again, thought alcohol had nothing to do with it. And now that I think about it, that insanity is so crazy. You know, I was I ended up passing. They found me passed out, and I got rushed to the emergency room. And when I got to the emergency room, they told me that I had a bout of hepatic encephalopathy, and that's when your ammonia consumes your brain. Pretty much, your ammonia levels are so high that it floods your brain, and you don't remember when you come out of hepatic encephalopathy. You don't know your name, you don't know the president, you don't even know what day of the month it is. And I woke up to them coming in my room after that and telling me that I had end stage liver cirrhosis. And there was no treatment for me because I am not a candidate for a transplant, and that was the only cure. So there was nothing they could do for me but discharge me into hospice. And after 3 months at the hospital, I went into hospice care at home with my mom and my aunt and my mom, and it was hospice care at the house. So I could get out if I was feeling well enough, but they had me heavily medicated because everyone knows you go to hospice to die. They make you feel comfortable. And there was times where my mom got me to get out a little bit. And there was this place called Joe's Suburban Club. And I would go in there with my wheelchairs. The blue one, it was blue, and it was on that had the seat. So you could lean against it and scooch it like a walker, but then like you could sit on it and it had a little seat where you could lift it up and put stuff inside. So you could put your wallet in it and stuff. But I had that walker. And I walk into there with this big belly. And I walk into there with this big belly and and I was yellow, and my mom was there, not an alcoholic, but she sat in the meeting with me. And I would go there and I was like seeing these old men and these older women, and they were smoking in the smoking room, which I thought was pretty cool because there was no really smoking anywhere inside, and I smoked at the time. And not when I was in hospice, obviously I wasn't smoking, but I guess it just made me feel normal. Like I was around people. For the first time, I felt like I fit in with amongst a bunch of group of people that were spitting some type of knowledge that I kind of was trying to understand. But at that point, all I was trying to do was not to drink. And I was trying to get closer to God because I was very scared. But like I said, I serve a higher power and a faith in God that is just beyond belief. And I spent 6 months in hospice, and I started praying to God to get out of my situation. And when the nurse came to me one day, she told me that she took my test the day before and came back and told me that my liver enzymes had been down and I no longer needed hospice. It had been 6 months that I'd been there. And I graduated from hospice, this miracle only a God can have, only a God can create, right? And I went ahead and got out of hospice with liver cirrhosis that was regenerating itself. That is only by a power a power higher than myself, who I call God. And but I wasn't working a program. So less than a year later, I started drinking again. And my drinking got progressively worse. And by this time, the progression got beyond belief bad. I've been Baker acted. For those of you that not know, that's when they hospitalize you for the mental ward. Been Baker acted like 3 times for trying to kill myself. Um, my mom told me that I had to stop, and I just couldn't. I tried to stop on my own, and I had to I had seizures that put me into induced coma for 8 days once. And I woke up, and my mom was sitting on the hospital bed. She told me I had been there 8 days. I had my tongue was cut through, and I had blood all over my mouth. And I was like, "What is going on?" She was like, "Clariann, you have to stop drinking." And the doctors were like, "What is the like? You need to stop drinking." And I'm just like, okay. Seriously, like no one was going to get in between my alcohol and myself, not even my health. And that is the mentality I had. And there's a book, a quote in the big book, and I'm not going to quote the page, and this is paraphrasing, but it says, "This is the baffling power of alcohol, the utter inability to cease no matter the necessity or the wish." And I was that person. I definitely was that person. And I had to get sober, and I did. And my mother told me she was not going to watch me die. And then I went on to get a sponsor, and I started working a program regularly. My health was still declining, but I had to get help because my liver was failing. And after proving my abstinence to the doctors, they put me on that transplant list. And I found myself the Twilight Zone home group, who's here online, and it was during COVID. So this is really huge. When you're in the hospital, one person can go with you, and if she leaves, she can't come back, and you are by yourself most of the time because they don't allow visitors during COVID. And they actually like intubate you because if you don't have COVID, they protect you from the other people that have COVID in the hospital. So it was a really like weird time, and everything was new. COVID was new, and I was just scared. I have liver disease. I don't want to get COVID too, you know? So but they were working on me and they approved my transplant list and I was doing what I had to do, and Twilight Zone was there for me, and I was even chairing meetings from my hospital bed. The whole Zoom room saw me with the yellow, gray, zombie-like, distended bellies. They saw me on my hospital bed where I tried to stay awake, but constantly fell asleep during meetings where people would kindly turn my camera off. And but let me tell you about that home group that saved me. That was my home group at the time. And they stay on even after the meeting until the last person goes. And sometimes I would fall asleep on that meeting. I have like literally a sleepover online just to keep myself from taking a drink. And because even though I knew I was on that transplant list, I knew that I was like one drink away. Just give me one and I would be back to the races, right? I had to do anything to make it stop. And life was going really great. And then on March 9th of 2021, I just chose not to use my toolkit. I chose not to use my spiritual toolkit. And I thought that a bottle and some Xanax would help me. And I know this is outside, that's an outside issue, but that was what happened that day. And they were prescribed. But I conveniently mixed the two, which I drunk dialed a mentor of mine who has been there with me. He was the owner of the rehab that I went to in 2010. We still stayed in touch. I drunk dialed him. He couldn't call me back because I wasn't responsive. They came in my house. The ambulance came through my door. At this time, I had a key with a code on the outside of the door because the ambulance had been coming to my houses so much that my mother and this gentleman were decided to put a key code box outside so the ambulance can get in my door. So they came in my door, and I went back to the hospital. They took me to the hospital, and I woke up in the hospital at Tampa General Hospital. And I woke up to a letter beside my bed that said I've been kicked off the transplant list. And I'm very proud to say that March 10th, 2021 is my sobriety date, and I have not had a drink or any other mind-altering substances since that day. But I was now being hospitalized in the same hospital that kicked me off the transplant list. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And my situation was getting worse. And they were only putting band-aids on everything for me. And in 2 years, I was in the hospital every day, but 38 days. In 2 years. They kept on putting me in, putting me out. Now I'm going to paint a picture for you what cirrhosis looks like. You bleed from the inside out. Okay. When you bleed from the inside out, you vomit blood. It's that ugly, where they have to do emergency femoral blood into you. I've been to that. I've been through surgeries. I had 184 surgeries. I've had bowel obstruction surgery, gastrointestinal surgery, esophageal banding surgery over 80 times. And that was just for them to band the veins in my throat, sometimes putting 16, 20 bands. They look like little rubber hair bands, and they put them in your throat just so you could stop the internal bleeding. And don't get to mention when you have another blood problem and it comes from everywhere and the doctors don't know how to stop it. And this was a constant battle for me. They didn't know whether I was going to make it. Every single time I went in the hospital, it was critical. Every single time. I was taking over 50 medications. My mother had to come live with me because I couldn't live alone. We put monitors in the house, video cameras, because anytime my mother went to the store, she had to see if I was breathing because I had hepatic encephalopathy on a constant basis. And with this hepatic encephalopathy, my mom would leave me and be had to see if I was breathing. And I would be breathing, but she would come home. If I stayed asleep too long, she'd have to wake me up. And then she would find out she couldn't wake me up. And then I have to go back to the hospital. But by grace of God, a friend of mine told me, why don't you submit your paperwork to other hospitals? And I submitted them to four hospitals in Jacksonville, Miami, Gainesville, and Tampa was the fourth one, but obviously that was no show. So I got a call from UF Shands in Gainesville, Florida, and they are one of the highest rated for transplants in the nation. And they said they wanted to see me immediately. And they did not want to treat me at Tampa General Hospital. And just all I want to say, I made a mockery of myself. And you don't get on a transplant list and expect doctors to treat you with trust, like you're gonna, so I was looked at. I was actually like discriminated against a lot. And I didn't want to be in that hospital because I felt like I had burned my bridges there. It was really bad. And so I got medically transported to Gainesville by the grace of God, because they had to take me out of TGH where I was being treated just to get up to Gainesville to see if they can evaluate me. So I got up to Gainesville, and I remember them telling me, Dr. Zori, he tells me, "Are you going to drink? Because we're going to give you a PEth test, and a PEth test can tell if you're drinking within 6 weeks, if you had a drink within 6 weeks." And I said, "Absolutely not." My mother was like, "She's not drinking." I was like, "Man, I don't have time to drink. I'm in the hospital every day. Where am I getting it?" And I can't even say that because I'll tell you, one of the times I was in the hospital, I found some splits in my freaking bag, and I drank them and threw them in the freaking where they put the sheets. Like the nurse wasn't going to tell the doctor, and he came back in the room with a plastic bag. Like, "Are these yours?" That happened to me once too. I drank in the hospital when I was there for alcoholism. I did that before. That's how crazy and insane this disease is. But we all know this is a disease that lies in your head. Okay, a disease that tells you that you can have one more and it won't be so bad, and a disease that will tell you that your bottom wasn't that bad last time. But that didn't get me again, and I still didn't drink. And they decided to give me all these tests. They check you for everything when you're on the liver transplant list or trying to get on one. You can't have any other problems. You can't have high cholesterol. You can't have diabetes. You can't have gynecological problems. You can't have teeth problems. You can't have any type of infection in your body. And thank God I only had a liver problem, right? So I was good in every other area. So I got sent back home. It was in this time where I was sent back home and I was feeling not hospitalized feeling. And it was October 31st. It was Halloween day, and I dressed up like a hippie. And I remember going to my children's Halloween, and I couldn't make it down the block. It was a horrible day. I wasn't feeling good. And I'm going to tell you people something. Liver disease is slow and painful and slow. That's the worst part. Slow and painful, and you feel every lick of pain. And I'm telling you, my belly used to get so distended that I had to get it drained 3 times a week, and they would take out 16 to 18 liters of fluid. And I would have that done. They would drain it, and it would come right back up. And I would have to be in there 3 times a week towards the end. Sometimes they had to do it when well, let me go back. October 31st, I was feeling terrible, and I did not make it down the street. So I sat in the driveway, and I started giving candy out to the kids sitting on a chair. And I had to go excuse myself, and I went inside, and everybody was looking at me like, "You're having a bad day." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't, something was really off." And then that next day, November 1st, my mother called me in my room on the floor, and I was battling hepatic encephalopathy again. My mother decided not to take me to Tampa General Hospital because that virtuous woman, she was not going to hesitate. And her 74-year-old behind drove me straight 2 hours, 2.5 hours to Gainesville and said, "You guys got to take my daughter because I'm not taking her back there." On November 2nd, I woke up, and I woke up and there was a clock on the wall, and it was after midnight. That's how I know it was November 2nd. I didn't have my phone, and I didn't have my mom. And that's the first thing I always said: "Where's my phone and my mom?" Like they'll come out of come to consciousness, and I would be like, "Where's my phone and where's my mom?" And she was like, the nurse came, I started pressing the nurse button, the nurse comes in, and I start to focus, and she turns the light on, and there's that big whiteboard, the one that they write the nurse's name on, and they tell you the HIPAA code and whose family member can come in and who can you talk to. And that's right at the top in a big magnet in red bold print, it said hospice. And I was in hospice ICU at UF Shands. I did a total 360. And when they told me that they measure your liver score, it's called a MELD count. And when they measured my MELD count, I was at a 39, and they stopped counting at 25 normally. I was the sickest girl there, pretty much. And they didn't know what they were going to do for me. November 10th, they walked into my room and they told me that unfortunately I only had about 2 weeks left to live. And that was because not only did I need a liver, I needed a right kidney as well. Well, all I can say that there was 8 days went by. And I want to tell you this, okay? Because
I don't talk about this much, but in these the next days, I had planned my funeral. I had come to grips with the fact that I was going to die. I had a sense of peace that is undescribable. And I felt more closer to God than ever in my life. And sometimes when I'm in a really bad mood nowadays, I have to think back to those 8 days. But on November 18th, they walked in my room at 1:23 in the morning and they shook me on my knee and said, not only did they have a liver for me, but they had a kidney for me by the same donor. You know, it took me 15 years to drink my liver into cirrhosis. I started at 21. And not all people will be spared like I do. And after 3 days of surgery, I woke up and I was given the biggest gift, the biggest present. It was called life. My sisters told me when they saw me when I woke up that I remember them saying that the first thing they noticed was the white was in my eyes. They hadn't seen the white in my eyes in forever. People, I looked like a highlighter. I looked, my gums, my teeth, my nails, I looked like a highlighter. And as soon as I got a new liver, the white was in my eyes. About about noon that day, I walked for the first time in months. I had to learn how to eat again. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to do all this stuff. I had physical therapy, occupational therapy. But I'm telling you, it was 3 days of surgery. It was 3 days of hanging from a cliff, and God snatched me up and said, nope, I'm not done with you. And if you don't, if someone doesn't think that there's a higher power after hearing what I just said, I don't know what else to say. You know, today life is really good. I live in a world that's beautiful because I choose to see it that way. Because today I have a choice. Because when God blesses you, He blesses you with an abundance. And it says it on page 68 in the big book. Never to apologize for depending to anyone for depending on your creator. And I most certainly will not apologize for how I rely on Him and my creator Himself. Because I'll tell you right now, amidst all that chaos and the descent of my addiction, you know, I was faced with that starking like awakening. When I was given that like 2 weeks left to live, it was like I stood at a crossroads and I had the choice of darkness of the addiction and the promise of transformation, right? And through the grace of my conception of my higher power, I found the courage to confront my demons and embark on this journey of recovery. You know, when all seemed great, on 20 in March 5th of 2024, my mother passed away. And I was met with those four horsemen again: terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. And she was taken from me very suddenly, very unexpectedly. And I'll tell you the biggest gift about that. I didn't have to run away with those four horsemen. I surrounded myself with this fellowship because I knew that somewhere inside me there was a strength greater than my addiction and a purpose greater than my pain. And I'll tell you what the biggest gift of that was. We buried her on Saturday. She died on Tuesday. We buried her on Saturday, and I turned 3 years sober on Sunday. And the Sunday before that, she told me, Mamita, you're going to be 3 years next week. And she died on Tuesday. So my mother went because she was ready. My mother went because she knew that I was going to be okay. But I got to sit there and I got to see her take her last breath. And I got to sit there and witness that with a memory that I couldn't remember. And it was very painful. And grief is very hard. But there is nothing that a drink is going to solve for this alcoholic. There is no problem that a drink is going to solve. Now, let me tell you, I have a dialogue with my higher power today, and I have to be careful not to get it confused with the monologue I have with myself and the dialogue I have with my higher power. Because when my monologue for myself, I keep that up, I get in the way of myself, my stinking thinking gets in the way, and then my ego comes in and my ego kills my spirit. You know, I know how to think things through today. You know, I I just have to say that these transplants weren't a medical miracle. They were a gift from God. And it's like all I can do every day is honor this gift. Is totally honor this gift and totally utterly honor this gift because without that, I have to understand when it says in the big book, it says that he'll restore us to sanity. And I just felt that that didn't apply to me.
I felt that my life was so out of control for so long. I was physically broken. I was emotionally shattered. I was spiritually bankrupt, and I couldn't manage my own drinking, let alone my own life. But the idea that God could help me if I sought him, that felt impossible at one point. But then when I think about those 8 days where I had utter serenity and I knew I was going to die, I had complete peace in those 8 days. And I don't understand if that's what God's wake up call was for me and that that's what it took me to stop drinking, then so be it. But that unfortunately is my bottom. You know, I stumbled, I fell, I relapsed, but each time I got back up because, like I said before, there was somewhere inside me that there was a strength greater than my addiction and a purpose greater than my pain. And along this journey, I've noticed that recovery is not about perfection. It's not about never failing. It's about rising up every time you do. It's about surrounding yourself with the people who lift you up and stick with you on this road to redemption. You know, those transplants were nothing short of a medical miracle, but they were a gift from God, a gift that came with the responsibility to honor it and the second chance by living differently. That's where sobriety came in. And that's where the big book and the 12 steps began to transform my life. Step one, I'm powerless. We all could see that, right? We all could see that. I'm the epitome of powerlessness. My face is in the big book, okay? For powerlessness. And then you go to step two, and then step three, where you turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood them. That's called surrenderance. That's called surrenderance. I have to let thy will be done, not mine. You know, today I live by that simple principle, God's will, not mine. That doesn't mean I always get it right. I'm far from it. But when I pause and I pray and I listen for his guidance, he never seems to steer me wrong. And he has never forsaken me. And even in my darkest moments, he has lit in the path, even in those darkest moments. And the steps continue to be my roadmap for honoring this gift of life. This helps clear away the wreckage of my past and take responsibility for my actions and live with integrity. They teach me how God's strength is way more stronger than my own. And that if I seek his will in all I do and trust that he has a plan for me that's greater than anything that I can ever imagine. Sobriety has brought me many gifts. And once I felt it was impossible to feel peace, purpose, and joy. But today that's become my reality. Today I can wake up without shame or regret. I can be present for my children. I show up for others. I live a life that honors the second chance that I've been given. You know, if you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to surrender and trust this process, I promise you, you will find freedom. You will find a peace and you will discover that what once seemed impossible is not only possible, it's waiting for you. You know, someone once told me, I don't know if you all are like me, but when I lost my best friend alcohol, because it was my best friend, I mourned it. I mourned the death of me not drinking. What else am I going to do? What else am I going to do? I know some of you feel like me. Don't get it twisted. I know you do because I know when you stopped drinking, you felt bored, right? What was going to fill that void? What was going to fill that boredom? Someone once told me, peace can feel like boredom to a person who's lived a chaotic life. That was my answer. So I have to change my way I do things. I don't see things negatively. People around me start changing. You think it's because they changed? No, it's because I changed. I live in a world that's beautiful because I choose to view it that way. Because in the end, we have to deal, this journey is never over. And we have to deal with this ism, this I, self, and me that lives in my head, that's thinking, that leads us on that path across the road where we're not supposed to, on the other side of the lawn. Yeah, that's what it tricks me to say. It tricks me to say I can say, we'll have one more. It tricks me to tell me I'm not good enough. But you know, we all have a constant battle with this ism. And I need to believe that I have a big view of God and that I'm there to receive him and what he has planned for me and what he has in his will for me. And I have acceptance. And that's one of the most vital things in my sobriety. And I have to accept everything does not always have to go my way or the way I want them to go, but I also have to accept God's will is where he has planned me to be. And that takes a lot of courage, but I seek progress again, not perfection. As alcoholics cannot afford to take a day off. I know I can't, you know, because life gets lifey. And sometimes those lifetime things feel gigantic. But half of the times, those gigantic things are living in my head. I'm fighting, battling myself, and they're living in their rent free. And half the conceptions I make up aren't even happening. Tell me I'm lying. I see some of you nodding at me because I know it's true. And then, so what we do is we battle. We battle with this thing, and we have to stay on this path of righteousness, right? Stay on this path that God wants to lead us on. Be the true person that He intended for you to be. I have to do 5 things a day. I don't drink. I pray. I talk to another alcoholic. I go to a meeting and I do the next right thing in front of me. You know, my sponsor always says it's 8:24 right now where I'm at. At 8:23, I can't change. And 8:25, I don't even know what's gonna happen. So I'm gonna stay in 8:24. And for you newcomers in here, sometimes it takes minute by minute. And the best part about this is you don't have to get it all at once. If you're blessed with another day, you're blessed with another day to fight. You know, I I I don't feel I'm a perfect person sitting here in front of you. I feel like I'm a person transformed. I don't want people to look at me as I'm perfect. I would rather people look at me and view me on how I deal with my imperfections because I want to be defined by my resilience, not by my mistakes or by my addiction, but by my will to survive and my commitment to live each day with purpose and gratitude. My mother always said, God works at 11:59. Well, she said it like this, and I have to do it like her way because she had a heavy Spanish accent. And she goes, God worked at 11:59 y 59 seconds. That's what she used to say to me. And you know what? He sure did. And she said that through my whole journey with her. And he literally came in at 11:59 and 59 seconds for me. But I found a new way to life, a life where I'm present, a life where I'm free from the chains of alcohol, where I can finally say that I like to see the person in the mirror. I've learned to step aside and let my higher power lead me, trusting that his plan is far greater than anything I could have imagined for myself. Today, life is nothing short of a miracle, but I've been given the opportunity to live for something greater than myself, and I live in step 12 constantly. I have to give back what I was given. I think that's the only way. You have to understand it's God's plan, not mine. My children once looked at me with pain in their eyes, and now they see a mom who shows up, who loves them deeply and they can trust again. And I've learned that life isn't about escaping, but facing it with courage, faith, and the tools of this program provide that. It's about living each day with gratitude, gratitude for a second chance, for the people who walk alongside me this journey, and gratitude for the newcomers who remind me where I came from. So as I speak and I want to tell you, listen, the grass is actually greener on this side of the lawn. I know what it feels like to give up. I want to know what it feels like when I don't. I shouldn't even be sitting here talking to you today, but I really do. God put me here so that I can preach this message so that your downward spiral doesn't have to be as bad as mine. And use this as a guide, not to scare you, but as a way to give you hope of what you can do if you change your life. And you could do it immediately at 8:26 right now. You have another chance at 8:27 if you make it there, and you got 8:28 and go on, and so on and so on. If you keep on going and keep on trudging this road, because it is a happy destiny. And those 9-step promises do come true, and some of them haven't. But I know they will because most of them have come true, and I have no reason to believe they won't. I still deal with things. Fear of economic insecurity will leave us. Yeah, nah, that hasn't left me yet. But I'm dealing with it and I'm dealing with it. And that's the best thing. I don't deal with things with emotions as much anymore. Yeah, I get out of myself and I get ungodly. I don't want to get it twisted by anybody. I am not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but I have a reminder. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who knows I'm her sponsee. I know who my grand sponsor is. She knows I'm her sponsee. I have sponsees that I talk to and take through the big book, just the same one I was. And we have to get down to the causes and conditions. This is not about stopping drinking alcohol. This is about living a life that we were meant to be. So we have to get down to the causes and conditions. You got to write in that paper. You have to write down what it is and what role you played in these situations and these resentments. You need to clear away that wreckage of your past. That's the only way to get through it. And I have to be reminded sometimes you have a resentment, put it on paper. Again, seriously? Yeah, I do that. I still do that. Oh, I don't want to get a paper out. I don't want to get my notebook out. But then when I do it, Clarion, why didn't you just get your notebook out? It's seriously like that. You know, um, every one of us is a part of this incredible journey. And we need to learn to trust the process, surrender our egos, and live with honesty. and then we get to enjoy the ride. The big book promised us a life beyond our wildest dreams, and I'm here to tell you that that's real. Newcomers in here, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm glad you're here. And I want you to know that you don't have to do this alone. The big book speaks volumes about what it takes to live a life from the grip of alcoholism. And it reminds us that sobriety isn't something we achieve, but we move on from. It's something we maintain daily, like tending to a garden to keep it alive. You know, my journey is not over, and it never will be. Every day I have to stay on this path. I must do the work. I have to stay connected to my fellowship and remember that I'm only one drink away from falling back into the abyss of being a drunk. We are defenseless people against the first drink. It says it in the big book, and it's true. I am living proof of it. No matter how much I tried to stop, I couldn't. And the only reason I could nowadays is because I've surrendered to a higher power. Simple as that. The big book doesn't keep me sober. The meetings don't keep me sober. God keeps me sober. God brought me to AA. AA saved my soul. Period, point blank. Everyone read the big book. Everyone do the work. That's part of the process. God leads you to this program to teach you the tools, to give everyone that spiritual bag, spiritual toolkit that we're supposed to carry with us every single day when we're faced with confrontations that will make us think awry. But this journey is not over. And today I'm strong, and today I'm free, and today I can actually say that I'm sharing this story with you in hopes that it may inspire just one person to believe that change is actually possible. Now, to those of you who are struggling, who feel lost, I'm not sure how much time I have. It doesn't matter. But for
You
those
have
of you who are struggling,
5 minutes.
okay, perfect. For those of you who are struggling, who think you're beyond saving, I say this to you, you are never too far gone. You are never too far broken. There is always hope and always a way to move forward. And it starts with the choice to live and the choice to fight and the choice to believe in the own power of your recovery. Because today, I'm not just a survivor, we all are. Today, we can rise from the ashes of our past more stronger and wiser than ever, determined to live a life that we were all meant to live.
Now,
And I just want to say thank you to you all for letting me share my journey with you. And I always say this, may we all walk the path of recovery together, one day at a time, with courage and faith, and with an unwavering belief that you are enough because you truly are. I love you all, and there's nothing you could do about it. Thank you for letting me share.